This episode is in partnership with Authority Magazine. Authority Magazine, a Medium publication, is devoted to sharing in-depth and interesting interviews featuring people who are authorities in business, pop culture, wellness, social impact, and tech. Today, we're going to meet a young woman full of life, spirit, and compassion.
And Emme Harris has a lot to say. She is a writer living in Los Angeles and preparing to direct her first short film called Heavy Stuff.
Heavy Stuff is a film about her own late mother and the challenges she faced and the complexities of grief. Emme Harris, welcome to Believe in People.
Thank you so much for having me.
So explain this to me. Everything is funnier right after you cry, right before you cry. What's that about?
Yeah, that's a great question. I brought that on myself for sure by saying that. I just think the hardest I've laughed in my life has been like in really emotional moments. I think a lot of people can relate, like when you experience something really sad and then someone in your life alleviates that by like making light of it. I think that that's like such a beautiful, special thing that I feel really lucky to like, I'm surrounded by people in my family that are very funny and in my life that are very funny. And I think it's not like not taking life seriously, but like a little bit like that, like things happen, shit happens. And I don't know, just being able to like remember like the beautiful thing about being alive, which is like people and like talking like this and laughing, is always great to me. And also, yeah, when you're really emotional, like everything is heightened. So I think like even this like smallest thing is like the funniest thing I've ever heard.
So really, Emme, you're a comedian because they gather their really their stories through darkness, like through they're quite cynical.
Yeah. I'm very comedy focused. I'm like not necessarily a performer, like I've considered it, but I'm more drawn to like writing comedy. But yeah, especially now like modern sitcoms, which I love, they're like the saddest shows on TV. But I think that that's awesome and like very cool that I feel like there's so much more room for nuance now in everything.
Isn't it funny that you, in a second here, I'm actually going to ask you to tell everyone what it is you're doing and where your trajectory is going. But I was just going to say, as an aside, that if you think that sitcoms are the funny or the saddest things, if you think that sitcoms are the saddest things on TV, I actually think that cable news programs are the funniest thing on TV, and
Such a
it's
good
only
point.
because it's because it's just like a clown show. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's just me mouthing off about one of my own pet peeves. Um, you're from New Jersey, but now you're in Los Angeles, California,
Yes.
and you are trying to make it there as a writer in television. But
Yeah.
the reason you're here today is because you're making this film, and it's a very personal film. It's a film about your own family. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. This film, it's like my first journey into directing, which is really exciting. It's just it's inspired by my relationship with my parents, both of them. My mom passed away in 2020, and she dealt with like a lifetime of struggling with addiction and like mental illness. And when she passed away, I mean, like I mentioned before, like it was, one of the saddest times in my life, but also there was a lot of funny things that came out of it, like just experiencing it with my family, who's a family of funny people, and specifically with my dad. And so I wrote this film it's a short about a daughter and her dad cleaning out the apartment of the mother after she had passed away. Like it is fictionalized, it's not entirely based on my life, but just going through like the garbage of someone's life and like trying to piece together who they were and like that in conflict of like who you thought they were. Like, um, yeah, I don't know. I just think it's like very relatable to a lot of people. I think I was nervous when I started raising money on Kickstarter because I don't get personal online a lot. Like I hadn't even told a lot of people in my life directly that my mother passed away. Because it was like COVID and then it felt like weird. Like, it's weird to announce death over the internet. So I didn't post anything.
Mhm.
Um, and people just would find out from talking to me. So when people reached out and were like, I had a very similar experience, or like, I didn't know you were going through that. Um, yeah, I think a lot of people understand the anxiety of like having a parent or a person in your life suffering for so long. Like my entire life, my mom's been suffering. Um, and the constant anxiety of waiting for something bad to happen, and then the worst thing finally does. I think a lot of people experience that. And then this film a little bit touches on something that like I was very scared to put out into the world, which is like a weird feeling of relief after losing that person. Like watching someone suffer their whole life and then losing one of the most important people in your life, you're like, I shouldn't feel this tiny bit of relief, but I do because I feel like I've been under a fire forever. And now I at least know that you're not hurting anymore. But also it feels like maybe I'm feeling comfort for myself that like I no longer have to watch you suffer, which feels very selfish, you know? So this just it's only a short, so it's only like gonna be about 10 minutes to deal with all
And
that. But I'm
10
gonna do my
joyful
best.
minutes.
Yeah.
And it's called
Yeah,
heavy stuff, so it's going to be a heavy 10 minutes. But I think it's, first of all, is this a healing journey for you, Emmy? Is this why you're doing this?
I think definitely. I think since my mom passed away, I've been trying to write something that like I feel like accurately expresses like all the different feelings I had. And it felt like I finally made it to a point where I'm like really happy with this script. And yeah, it is really healing to like get so much support from the community to make this film and then to get to make it and then to talk to actors and be like, this is how you're feeling. And it's like, I'm just sharing my own feelings. It's like definitely a little bit, uh, I don't know. I hope it doesn't come off as like self-indulgent, but it's definitely helpful. And I feel really lucky to be able to get to make it.
Well, I guess you could suggest that it would be self-indulgent if you wanted to go that way, but if you look at it a different way, which is what I'm suggesting here, is that I don't know of any family anywhere that isn't touched or hasn't been touched in some way by either some form of addiction or alcoholism, mental illness. Depression is huge. You mentioned COVID earlier, and that left a huge swath of agony throughout our society.
Yeah.
In a way, the fact that you're bearing yourself in this film, I bet, and I just want to get you to answer this, but I bet a lot of people will probably be able to identify with that.
I think a lot of people do, which is, yeah, it's great to hear from people who like have similar experiences. Like, because as you said, like everyone on earth has been touched by these things. And I think times are changing, but I think a lot growing up, like people didn't super talk about it. So when I was a kid, I was like, oh my God, I'm the only girl in the world who's having a hard time. And that's just not true at all. And so getting to like learn that through my adulthood has been really amazing. And yeah, I don't know. A lot of people reached out and I won't share their specific stories because like I want to, respect people's privacy, but yeah, people having like the similar experience of like cleaning out homes and like learning things about people. And also just yeah, having complicated relationships with people like parents and then those parents passing away, like that's a very singular and confusing experience. But yeah, we're not alone. Everyone experiences this stuff.
Mhm.
And I mean, you think about it too, interestingly, so I'm interested to find out how you became a writer, what interested you in becoming a writer. And yet, as a writer, who was it? Kevin, you'll probably know this. Hemingway said something about bleeding, make sure you just leave everything on the page, you just let it
Mm.
bleed. Or what did they say, Emmy? Do you remember that quote?
I don't remember that quote, but that's a good
Something
quote.
about just give it all. I mean, you just leave
Yeah.
nothing to bear. You just have to say how you feel. But how'd you become a writer?
Well, my mom was very supportive of me growing up. I was like always very into writing, but for a long time I thought I was going to write books. And then I realized I hated being alone. And then I thought, oh God, I got to write TV or movies or something. I love like being with people and I love movies and TV so much and getting to like collaborate. Um, because like I will never be the smartest person in a room. I don't have every experience. And I just think it's like such a privilege to get to work with groups of people, like different people, and like get to all make one thing together. I think things are better with like many brains behind it. And like that's very much the process of filmmaking. Like directing so far seems really just like identifying people you think are great and letting them be great and supporting them. And um, I think that's like mainly what I want to do with my life is like support people I believe in, and also like make something together. It's great. I love like collaborating with people and I love artists like of all kinds. Like I'm never going to be an actor, but I think acting's so like beautiful and interesting and special. And I want to like support people to make their best thing. Um, so yeah, I just feel really lucky to get to do it even at this small scale and like hopefully just continue to do that.
So, to quote you again, you're making a movie about a woman and her trashed apartment.
Yeah,
That's
let's go
verbatim
there.
from you. So I was just thinking about that because you mentioned supporting of actors, supporting. Um, I want to know how much support you got from your father while you and your father were trying to make sense of what was in that trashed apartment, and whether or not you discovered anything about your mother you didn't know.
Yeah. Um, so I'm pulling from like a lot of different experiences in um like the making of this script because like my main experience I'm drawing from is actually from like before my mom died being in her apartment. It was a time where uh she we like had checked her into a rehab or my dad had or like some sort of detox center. I hadn't seen her in maybe a year or two because at a certain point, like contact for me became really unhealthy. Um, and my dad was like, he thought it would be nice if we like, she's a messy person. We always knew that because we lived with her. I'm a messy person because of that. He was like, we should go like clean up her house. So when she comes back, she feels like she's got like a good start, like a fresh start. And we went to her house and like I had to reckon with the fact that I didn't know how much she was suffering and how bad it was because like to come into a home that was like piled high with clothes, glass on the floor, like food everywhere, like garbage everywhere. Like I hadn't known that it was possible for her to not take care of herself this much. Um, and going through that space and like trying to clean it up and make sense of it, like was so painful. And then when my mom did pass away, I was so scared to go back to her house and have to face that again to an even like larger scale because she was at a point like she must have been doing even worse. So I'm like ashamed to say, but like almost like I couldn't go. And that's kind of what this film was me doing. It's saying like, what if I went? Like, what if I faced it? And I mean, like I went through the stuff that my dad brought home. He brought home like boxes and boxes of her things. And I was unable to confront what she had been going through almost. And I've been able to confront it more now, like years later. But I also just found it funny the different ways me and my dad were reacting to this because my dad's first instinct was, we have to sell her stuff. And it's like very soon after she died, and he's just trying to distract himself. And he's now a top seller on like Depop or something. Like he's just like always packing up a shoe and sending it. And he's like, look, I'm a fast shipper. Like he's so proud of himself for this thing that I'm like, that's really crazy that you're doing that. But I appreciated the like difference. Like I came at it like very emotionally and he came at it so practically. And we just kept missing each other and being able to support each other. So I thought that was funny. And I brought this to this film because it like centers around like the character who's mirroring me is like confronting emotions and being like, am I like the worst person on earth? And her dad is like, we need to sell this piece of furniture. We need to sell it today.
Maybe that's your father's way of cleansing.
Yeah.
Or
No,
recovering.
it totally is. And like, I think at that time I was missing that. I was like, he's being practical, like I'm being emotional. But it's like that was his way of coping.
Yeah.
And that's been his way of coping my entire life, which I've clashed with. Like he's always approached everything with practicality and like, well, what can you do? And I've always been like, there must be something we can do. And like that I like I'm happy to now be like, oh, I can see where he's coming from and like I get it.
Yeah. And Emmy, so take us back a little when you're in your earlier life. How did you recognize, or what was your life like with your mom and dad growing up? And were they together? And how did you kind of release your emotions? Was it that laughter, crying, sort of
Yeah.
expression?
It was that, and it was also a lot of heartburn. I was like in the nurse all the time with constant heartburn, and I'm like, what was that? I think I was just a really stressed out kid, and I was unable to release my like feelings for a long time. Like I kept things in and didn't talk to people, which I think like was to my detriment. And then getting older and like feeling safe to talk about things was really helpful. But I mean, I grew up like very lucky. Like my parents loved me so much and they supported me with everything they had. And they just like were in a tough spot. Like I think looking back, my dad might see how things could be done differently. But I think at the time, like he's from London, he's in the US, he has no family support. My mom didn't have any family support. It was just like them and us in this house, and they were doing their best. But they like weren't really together my whole life, but we all lived together kind of thing. Um,
Hmm.
like it was like a partnership, but it was like very complicated for them. And yeah, I mean, my mom was like a very supportive person, but like it was the kind of thing where like one day she'd be like, we're going to the mall and we're like doing all these things. And then the next day she'd be like, I'm not leaving my bed. Like I will not leave my bed if the world ends. And she was just a very smart person who was always like reading the newspaper in her bed. Her bed was like piled high with newspapers and um yeah, I don't know. I think she was like a very like, you know, when some people are just too smart for their own good almost.
Well,
I think I'm lucky that I have like a little bit of dumb and then I get to like kind of coast. But my mom was just hyper intelligent in a way that like was painful for her. And like it's kind of, I mean,
Was she
even
kind
though
of like
like
an Alan Watts?
look, I'm gonna be dumb again and be like, who is that?
No,
but
no, I'll share some more information about him. But he was almost too smart for this world, and he
Yeah,
really contemplated. That's it. I'm leaving this planet. I mean, he really did.
yeah,
He was really a bright guy.
although
yeah.
he didn't, I
And
mean, I don't think Alan Watts had any addiction problems or those sorts of things. And of
he
course,
did. Yeah, he was an alcoholic.
really, well,
Yeah.
that's something I didn't know. But I was going to ask Emmy, I mean, because of that, because of I guess the challenges that your mother's personality uh, forced her to deal with, do you feel that's perhaps a reason why she did turn to substance abuse?
Totally. I think as I've gotten older, I've come to understand like the holistic nature of being a person who suffers with addiction. It's just self-medicating. It's self-medicating something that is wrong with you. I mean, not wrong in a bad way, but something that's like it's keeping you from living your best life.
Mm.
And it's trying to medicate that away and being unable to because, you know, it doesn't fix it. And she did try to get like mental health help for a long time, like dual diagnosis type problems. But it was just unable to help her, which is, you know, really sad. And I think, yeah, like some people can go to rehab like one time and they have the tools they need, and some people just can't. Like, I don't want to like take away hope. Obviously, I think, everyone should have hope, but some people like really need a lot of help. And like also if you only learn about like that side of addiction late in your addiction, like that's awful. It feels like you've spent so much time trying to fix a problem one way, and it's like that wasn't even the problem. That was just the way it was presenting to the world. Um, so I think figuring that out as early as possible, I imagine, is helpful. But yeah, she definitely like was dealing with a lot.
And how did that transfer into your life, Emmy? Like, how do you cope when things are challenging in your life?
Um, it's such a good question. I think I use humor as a coping mechanism. I think I'm a little bit avoidant about talking about how I'm feeling and stuff like that. I feel like I have a little bit of the, oh, it's fine, um, which then just it boils up later. So it's all stuff that I'm trying to like unpack now. I feel like lucky that, as you live, you learn more and more about yourself. And I like recognize more things about myself that I'm like, oh my God, that's a crazy thing that you do. What if we fix that? Yeah, and getting like any like in all my relationships with my friends and like my family and stuff, I feel like the older we get, the more we're able to like accept each other for who we are and like support each other in the ways that we need. Um, so yeah, it's still a journey. I'm not my room is messy, you can't tell. I'm a little stressed out. It's all in that corner. I woke up and I went, oh, then I pushed it all that way. So, I have a long ways to go, and I'm just really excited to keep going.
How old are you?
I am 25. I'm turning 26.
And so I mean, you're so well spoken about this. Where did you go to school?
I went to public school in New Jersey, and then I went to college in Boston at Emerson.
Ah, so I mean, I'm not going to give you one of these hackneyed, dad talk kind of things like, oh, you're sounds so, mature for your age and all those kinds of
Oh.
things. Even though that's basically what I just did. But
I was just going to say that.
I'll
You
take
just
it.
did.
hello, it's dad talk time. But
Practical dad.
I want you to like promote yourself a little bit here by telling us where where are you going? Where are you headed?
Ugh, straight to the top. No, I'm trying to, I'm like working in TV, obviously, but I would love to write. I want to I just would feel privileged to spend the rest of my life like doing what I'm doing now, which is like writing, like trying to direct, working on my friends' projects. Like I have a lot of friends that are, making things and writing things, and just getting to be a part of it is really fantastic. So yeah, hopefully I go somewhere.
And Emmy, who I'm just curious, who motivates you or who inspires you? Who are you? Do you look to when you're reaching for that, that beam?
Yeah, I mean, I hope it's not, I feel like every girl my age who's like my demographic is like Phoebe Waller-Bridge, and I do feel that. I love like British comedy. I mean, I love comedians. I love like the work of very funny women. And I just want to keep, learning and heading that direction.
We we both heard you use the word hope there, and
Oh,
you know, ever since we started to do these little talks every week, we've tried to sort of gather around the campfire people who, in spite of what's going on, I mean, in the news again this week, there is more violence on every page, and we're still trying to come out of a dark period with COVID and things. Why do you still have hope? Why? Because you're young?
Yeah.
None of
It
you
might
have
just be
enough?
because I haven't suffered enough yet, frankly. Like I'm not sure. Maybe it's I'm delusional. I definitely get into periods of time where it feels like hope is really bad. Like that summer my mom passed away in like 2020, and like watching the world burn, and like just feeling like our government, now I'm getting into lands of no hope, but like doesn't support us and doesn't love us. It feels really hard to have hope, especially, yeah, with the way some politicians treat, I don't know, the cable news like it's theater. I relate to you on that. Like, it is hard to have hope, but I do have hope just in like every small interaction with a stranger I have is always amazing. Like any Uber driver, any person I hold the door for, or they hold the door for me. Like oh my God, I almost said the title. I believe in people. Like I do think people are amazing. And I feel constantly like surprised by them, and like just lucky to get to meet more people. I think people are so interesting. And everyone has a story. This is just the thesis of your podcast. I'm embarrassing myself, but like everyone does. And
Isn't it so
And you're
true?
telling it. And Emmy, you have an opportunity to share those stories.
yeah, I think we all do. And I yeah, I think people, that's my thesis. People are great. But some people like I can understand. I can understand where you're like, oh God, like
Uh,
hope is lost.
I think she's going from the laughing to the crying part.
I think so too.
Because you've kind of screwed up our whole modus operandi here, because every week we ask the person that we're lucky enough to be speaking to, why do you believe in people? And of course, you, who are obviously a television and writing genius, figured that out and answered the question even before we got the chance to ask it.
Oh
So
no, I'm
thank
sorry.
thank you for being with. What an inspirational
Yeah.
half hour it's been. Thank you, and good luck. And please let us know when the movie is done and ready to go.
Yes. We'll help promote it, Emmy, because you're on, just want to make sure you're on Kickstarter. And how's it going? How's Kickstarter?
Great. We reached over our goal, and we're preparing to film at the end of May. Hopefully we'll be able to submit the film to festivals starting in the fall. It's called Heavy Stuff. I will make a website for it eventually.
Very good.
Awesome.
Excellent. Well, we're here to help promote you.
Thank
We
you so
believe in
much.
you, Emmy. We believe in you.
Thank you.
Thanks. I just can't get over how much life that young woman is filled with, how much positive energy I have managed to riff off of her. And despite the fact she obviously has faced a lot of challenges with her mother, as her mother and father also faced challenges, I think that it really is a story that she should share with all of us. And I'm glad she shared some of it with us today.
She should. And, Emmy is a spark, and I think now that she's kind of mentioned that now that she's older, she has that ability to be more vulnerable and be able to be open so that she can make this short film so that we can all learn from it. And I think that's really remarkable. She's just a delight. She really is. If you've enjoyed this podcast, and we hope you do, and did, then we encourage you to subscribe to our podcast, Believe in People, because we believe in you. And thank you so much for listening and watching.
Thanks again. See you next week.